Have you ever agreed to do something that you know you really don't have time to do? My guess, if you're watching this video, is that that happens a lot. And the good news is that it truly is possible to stop overcommitting, but it's not as easy as people say. It's not as easy as learning that no is a complete sentence. It's just not that easy. So I want to start the video today by talking about 5 reasons that we overcommit, and I would love to hear from you. Which one of these is your reason? And knowing the reason is going to help you know which solution. But I am also going to share 3 solutions that will really help you stop overcommitting. And it's not going to be about, oh, just say no, because you know that already. All right. So with these 5 reasons, you might have just one of them. You might think all 5 apply to you. Let me know. But number 1 is people pleasing, because they focus on making other people happy. They don't like to disappoint other people. There are some basic people pleasing tendencies that cause us to say yes when we really know we need to say no. Number 2 is about self-esteem, both how I look to myself and how I look to you. So sometimes we overcommit because we see ourselves as competent, super capable. We take pride in how much we can get done. We know we do a really good job and we can say yes and we'll get it done somehow. And then we're like, why did I do that? Well, sometimes we're really focused on wanting other people to admire us. And this very often comes from a childhood role where we got praise and recognition for what we accomplished, right? Maybe we grew up in a house where we were the competent one, or we were the caretaker. We were the one that could be relied on. So not only was that sort of our role, like we had to do it and we felt anxious if we didn't, but we also got our self-esteem from it. And I'm going to come back to this concept of what we learned in childhood that causes us to overcommit in most of these, because clearly that's also underneath the people-pleasing. All right, so people-pleasing, self-esteem, wanting others to admire us, as well as wanting to admire ourselves, right? That's number 2. Number 3, no one can do it as well as I can do it. I better do it because I'll do it better than anybody else. So this can really, really hamper entrepreneurs who start businesses and they do it all themselves. And then when they have to begin to delegate, or know they should delegate, they just can't quite let it go. But it also can hamper anybody in any job. Particularly, again, if you grew up with that role where you were the competent one, and if you relied on somebody else, they didn't quite live up to what your expectations were. You developed a feeling of, I can't rely on others, I can't trust others. This might be a big one for you. So again, those negative core beliefs, going to come back to them. But this lack of trust in others can also impact you with regard to household chores. I worked with many couples during my 20 years as a psychotherapist, and this is very gendered. I will say this is gendered, but often the women would feel like they did all the housework and they would be angry at their husbands for not doing more. But the husband would say, yeah, but whenever I try to do it, you criticize I'm not doing it well enough. And then the wife would say, yeah, well, you just don't do the laundry well. So for me, looking at that situation, that is more about a core belief of not being able to rely on others and maybe like getting a little stuck with regard to priorities or rigidity about how perfect something needs to be. Because in the scheme of life, how laundry's done, not really that important. Something shrinks, okay, right? So if you find you're not delegating, even with regard to household chores, right, to your kids who don't do it quite as well or to whoever, this one could be big for you. Okay, the number 4 reason that we overcommit is actually about unexpected events. Unexpected events happen to all of us. We can't plan for them. They're unexpected, right? So there are definitely times in life, I think for almost everybody. Let's take negative core beliefs out of the picture here for a minute. Almost everybody will get into situations once in a while where they just have overcommitted and didn't realize it. My first career, which was on Wall Street, was mergers and acquisitions, and it was very deal-based. So you would generally work on about 3 deals at the same time. But the deals would sometimes just completely die. Like the parties would get angry at each other. They would break off negotiations. You wouldn't know if it would ever be renewed or not. So you could be working on 3 deals, really, really busy. Boom, all of a sudden, all 3 of them are gone. All 3 of them are either finished, over, or abandoned. You have nothing to do. You take on 2 more projects, but then one of those other deals comes back, or 2 or 3. So you would all of a sudden have 5 deals going, which was too much to handle. So the unpredictability of that type of work really, really brought this one into my life. But to some extent, we all have this in our lives, right? If you're a working parent, the unexpected event of a kid getting sick, or what would happen with my kids when they were young, one of them would get strep throat, then 2 weeks later, the next one would get it, then 2 weeks later, the next one would get it. How do you make it to work, right? So these kind of events put too much on our plate. This is super normal, and there are some things you can do to help. But before I go there, number 5 reason that we overcommit. Magical thinking about time. All right, bear with me here. I used to really suffer from this, and I still do once in a while. And I have somebody in my life, very close to them, really has this in spades. But magical thinking and time is about, it's like, okay, you're heading to an appointment that's 30 minutes away. And, it takes a little while to get there. But you're like, I can fit in a visit to FedEx and to the drugstore and this. And I'll be able to run all 3 of those errands in 15 minutes and then also get to my appointment on time. No, that's not how things work, right? Particularly if you think about unexpected events like traffic and other things that might come up. But also we just can have this really magical view of how long things take, and it can be way off. So thinking that you can fit all of this stuff into a certain amount of time, I call that magical thinking about time. Let me know if you ever feel that you suffer from that. So I'm going to get to the 3 solutions, but before I do that, I really want to go a little bit more into the deeper issues underneath these, particularly underneath 1 through 3, but also a little bit under number 4 and 5. So if we grew up in a dysfunctional family or a family with some type of abuse or difficulty or serious problems like financial problems in the parents, or maybe one parent was sick. Sometimes it's things where people feel like, well, it wasn't my parents' fault that they didn't have enough money or had financial problems, or it wasn't my parents' fault that they had a physical illness, which is true. But those kind of difficulties can really cause us to internalize certain messages about ourselves and the world that can impact us throughout life until we kind of recognize them, pull them out, look at them, and then heal from some of that. So these childhood difficulties don't necessarily have to fall into the category of trauma, but certainly if you had trauma in your childhood, then you probably have internalized some of these negative core beliefs. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the degree of problem in childhood doesn't have to be extreme, although it can be, for you to internalize these messages. And some of these messages could be, I don't count. If you have a parent or even a sibling who has a physical illness, you might have had as a child to put aside your needs for that person. And yes, it makes sense, but in a child's mind, children don't have the perspective needed to really see the big picture. So in the child's mind, they are going to feel like, kind of there's something wrong with me, that I don't really count. These other people are more important, and I need to prioritize their needs and their wants. And then obviously on the extreme end, if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, you're going to feel that in spades. I don't count. What's really important is that my narcissistic parent feel good about whatever is happening, and I have to prioritize that over myself. So feeling like you don't count is going to impact this people pleasing, because if somebody asks you to do something, you're going to be like, sure, it's more important that I do this for them than I take care of myself. Or it could be that internalized message of I can't trust others because you grew up with family members you couldn't trust, who weren't capable, who couldn't get things done, and it did all fall on your shoulders, that you were parentified as a child. And I do have a bunch of videos on that. But if you grew up in that situation where you were the one people looked to take on responsibilities beyond your age, right, or beyond the norm for your age, you will probably feel like I can't trust others. And you'll probably actually also feel I'm not good enough because the responsibilities put on you were beyond your age. And so when people hear me talk about negative core beliefs, sometimes they might say, well, it's true. I couldn't trust people when I was young. Yes, it was true then. But now we need to change how we approach the world, because there are some people we can trust. And there also are some people we can trust to do certain things, laundry, proofreading a document, right? You might be able to trust people to do certain things that your inner child or your inner urgency, right, is going to tell you, no, you can't trust this. But your rational mind is going to be like, yeah, actually now I'm an adult. I'm not in that situation. And if I can reverse this negative core belief, it'd be easier for me to put those things in place. And so I also talked about the super competent child, right? The hero child or the codependent who is the caretaker will have this in spades, right? Can only rely on myself. It's got to be done by me. So as you can see, all of those messages can lead you to overcommit. And then what they also can do is if those unexpected events come in, which happens to all of us, right? If you have these negative core beliefs, you won't pull on help the way somebody else might. You won't sort of raise the SOS flag and say, whoa, I'm overwhelmed. I can't do this all. What can you take on? So those negative core beliefs not only get us into trouble, but they block us from responding in a way that would benefit us when external events happen. All right, let me know if all that made sense. Okay, so what are some more practical ways to stop overcommitting? 3 things to think about. Number 1, expect the unexpected. I remember when I learned that phrase, it really hit me. It really stuck with me, and it was very powerful. As you plan your day, expect the unexpected. If you have a commute that usually takes you 20 minutes, but sometimes it can take you 40, you know what? See if you can build some cushion into your schedule so you plan for the 40, and then you have 20 minutes to do something before work starts. Or if you just say, okay, sometimes it takes me 40, I'm going to know I'm sometimes 20 minutes late, and I'm going to bring that in to my expectation rather than panicking about it. So padding one's schedule by expecting the unexpected. So that really helps with the last 2 of those 5 reasons that I mentioned, right? That magical thinking about time, which you need to sort of question and really think about. And maybe for the magical thinking, I'm just actually going to throw another one in here that wasn't planned, but I learned to double the time that I thought an errand would take me. So I thought an errand would be like, oh, that'll only be 10 minutes. I'm going to double that, and I'm going to say, nope, that errand's going to take me 20. So those 2 things, doubling the amount of time that I thought it would take me to do something and padding my schedule or my anticipation of events, helped me a lot not get into that panicked feeling of overwhelm. And then also it helps with overcommitting, because if you have a project and you think this project is going to take me 2 weeks, but instead you internalize this could take me 3 weeks, then it will help you balance your workload, both personal and professional. So I'm thinking of an example. As I'm filming this video, I'll often book around 2 hours and think I can film 3 to 4 videos, right? They end up after being edited only 10 minutes. Well, you know what? Usually I only get to 2. So even there, with that kind of thing, doubling the time that I think it is going to take me to do something will help me not add other things onto my plate for that day or for the future. Okay, so that one was expect the unexpected. Number 2, no one can do it as well as me. At what cost? At what cost to my well-being, to my mental health, to my stress levels? At what cost is it that I am keeping this responsibility and not either delegating it or asking for help? Because really verbalizing, even if it's just to yourself or writing it down on a piece of paper, what you are sacrificing when you feel like everything has to be done by you. Actually, that reminded me of a client I had who had young children, and she was very focused on raising them in a healthy manner. She wanted to prepare food fresh and healthy and do it herself, and it was all really good and heart-centered desires that make sense. But once she had her second kid, she would just be totally overwhelmed by all the food preparation. So again, it meant for her really looking at, okay, this is valuable and this is a priority for me to have fresh food cooked by me that's healthy for my kids. But if I look at the cost, and the cost is that I am a stressed out maniac, I have no patience for my kids, and my health is suffering, is it worth it? Okay. So that's why really looking into what is the cost of doing it all yourself, sticking with certain perfectionistic ideals, perhaps, or even, I don't know, a degree of rigidity around what is right. And where can you find some kind of reasonable compromise? The next one, number 3, this is a biggie. Not going to be a quick solve, but it's really to heal these negative core beliefs and develop healthy boundaries. So the boundary program, the online boundary program that I have, really focuses on those negative core beliefs that prevent us from establishing good boundaries. Because as I said in the very beginning of this video, we all know how to say no. There's this phrase like, no is a complete sentence. Yeah, we all know that. Does it mean we use it? No. And the reason we don't use it is because we have overwhelming emotions when we say no to somebody. So a piece of it is emotional regulation. And some of that emotional regulation is tied to our negative core beliefs about whether we can trust others, about what our role is, about whether we count, whether our needs and desires count. All of that is really what's underneath boundaries. So I do go into it in my boundary program, which you can check out. The link is in the description. I'll also show it here on the screen. But whether it is through my course or through working with a therapist, healing those negative core beliefs is the real cure to stop the overcommitting. Okay, I really hope this was helpful. I'd love to hear from you. So comment below. Let me know.